Welcome to New Jersey now. I'm Megan Vega. The Iraqi troop surge may be yielding dividends, but the pressure is growing on Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to show political progress. Fox's Doug Lizada reports from Washington. One prominent U.S. senator is now calling for him to step aside.
This new assessment may have within it some good news for the White House. On the other hand, it is also a clear wake-up call for the Iraqi government. U.S. troops are doing their part. More Iraqi forces are doing their part. But the Iraqi government has fallen behind. Two of the Senate's most respected voices on military matters, one Republican and one Democrat, say their recent visit to Iraq showed significant changes.
The Iraqi army clearly is stronger, more capable, has the greater willpower, and that our troops have been able to bring a reduced level of violence to a number of areas of Iraq.
But the senators also told Iraqi officials that time has run out for political progress. The troop surge was supposed to buy time for the Iraqi government, and many believe it's been squandered. And even if U.S. political support for the surge grows, current troop levels cannot last much longer.
We know that the surge has to come to an end. There's no question about that. I think everyone understands that by about a year or so from now, we've got to be a good bit smaller than we are right now.
And in the meantime, the pressure on Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki grows each day.
I hope that the Iraqi Assembly, when it reconvenes in a few weeks, will vote the Maliki government out of office.
Now, the White House still supports the Prime Minister. The next progress report on Iraq is due out to Congress next month. In Washington, Doug Lizada, Fox News.
With me now, Pete Cammarano, former top aide to Senate President Richard Cody and principal at Public Policy Advisors in Trenton, New Jersey. Also here is George Ajjan, founder of Ajjan Associates. Thank you both for being here with us today.
Pleasure.
Let's talk a little bit about the troop surge. We hear some people saying, yes, it's working. We heard other people saying, you know, the Iraqi government is not keeping up with its promises here in the war. They were supposed to meet some criteria. Are they meeting that criteria? What are we as voters, taxpayers, who are we supposed to believe here? Is it working or is it not working?
I think historically what we've seen is that, well, you put more troops on the ground, we can make some progress militarily, but the government in Iraq is clearly behind. And I think what the people in the United States want is a plan to start withdrawing some of our troops. And they want the confidence to turn it over to the Iraqi government that doesn't seem capable of doing it.
Is there no confidence in the Iraqi government at this point?
Yeah, it seems to me that most of Congress in both parties, you know, they kind of have the soap out, they have their hand on the faucet, and they're just ready to wash their hands of Iraq. And they're looking to blame that on the Iraqi government. To me, the issue is, as I've continued to state, we have to be cognizant that when we send our military into battle, the objective of that is to fight and win wars, not to do nation building. And the president most famous in recent memory for saying that is George W. Bush when he was governor of Texas running for president in 2000. So I think ongoing, the lesson for all of us, as you said, voters and political activists and in some cases elected officials, is to be clear that we send the message that the military's job is to fight and win war. Through War Declaration, Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, Congress shall have the power to declare war. Instead, we end up with these authorizations to use force, and we end up in these long-ended commitments, and that's what we're seeing here in Iraq.
It just seems to me that the line is very blurry. We went there to win a war, and now, as you were saying, your opinion is that we're nation building. What does that mean for us? What does that mean in this next election? Do we end the war? Do we continue nation building? Do we pull our troops out? What does that mean?
I think the unfortunate thing is it means that our troops are going to be there for a lot longer than anybody ever anticipated, and they're going to be in harm's way. As things become more and more turned over to the Iraqi government and the Iraqi military, our troops are going to be in a more difficult environment. There's going to be fewer of them, and they're in a very dangerous area.
But do you think it would be safe for us in the future to pull our troops out come September, come next year? Is it safe to pull our troops out and let Iraq be what Iraq is today? Do you think that Iraq could stabilize itself?
Well, I think it's folly to think that troops are just going to march out and be completely clear of Iraq within a month or something like that. That's just not going to happen. Just the logistics of transiting the troops and the supplies and the materials involved and whatnot. The current administration's plan, if you look at the embassy complex that we're building in Baghdad, for example, the fact that we're looking to build water bottling plants in Baghdad itself for the exclusive use of the U.S. military indicates that their plan is not to leave Iraq anytime soon. Now, whether a new administration comes in, Republican or Democrat, and decides to change that is yet to be seen.
I think the real issue is there is no plan, and there hasn't been a plan beyond when they sent the troops in. There is no exit strategy.
Why do we keep hearing about a plan? Why do we, as television viewers, as newspaper readers, as the public in general, keep hearing that there's a plan? There's a plan. We're taken care of. There is a plan. Where's the plan
Because
then?
naturally, the American people are inclined to want to see our nation accomplish good things. Unfortunately, the leadership, both in the executive branch and the legislative branch, really didn't do their homework. And there was all these grand ideas about bringing democracy to Iraq and establishing a new order in the Middle East, which is really unrealistic, and it's certainly not going to be accomplished by the U.S. military. And I think that it's hard for people to accept that. We know that men and women, courageous men and women in American uniforms are sacrificing their lives, and naturally people want to send their hearts out to them and want to congratulate them and wish them well in their mission. The question is ongoing. We need to make sure that our elected officials send them into missions that are reasonable to be accomplished.
Reasonable to be accomplished. Is democracy...
Through declaration of war.
Let's talk. Let me just ask you this question. Is democracy reasonable to expect in Iraq with the current government, in Iraq, the current leadership there? Well,
again, we've learned this lesson over the past couple of years, but defining democracy as holding elections. Elections can be a very crude form of democracy. And what we failed to anticipate in Iraq was that there was no civil society. You had a state which was basically a one-party system and a very vicious one at that. No functioning freedom of the press, no real civil society. When you remove the state from that, you end up with perhaps a new strongman state, which that didn't emerge. Now you have competing sectarian agendas. That is a democracy of a form, but it's not what we would come to expect, and it's certainly not good for the Iraqi people because there's a violent component to that.
I see you shaking your head at this.
The short answer is no. I don't think, given the current circumstances, democracy is going to be a long-term situation in Iraq if we leave.
I just want to ask one last question in this segment today. Senator Clinton recently came out and she wanted to make America's image overseas a little bit more positive. Is our image overseas so ruined because of Iraq, because so many people are pulling out, so many people are stepping away from the war?
Well, as someone who has actually visited Iraq as a congressional candidate in the 2004 election, in 2003 I had the opportunity to travel to Iraq, and I've traveled extensively in the Middle East and in other countries of the world. And yes, there is certainly a crisis of America's reputation and image, and the way that we rectify that is by focusing on a policy where we follow the advice of our founding fathers. George Washington, who warned in his farewell address to beware of foreign entanglements. John Quincy Adams, the sixth president, who said, America does not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. She's the well-wisher of freedom and independence to all, but the vindicator and champion only of her own. And whether it's Clinton or any of these other senators in both parties, or frankly any of the frontrunners for the presidential, they may have the best of intentions, but I don't think their words approach anywhere near the level of statesmanship demonstrated by those founding fathers.
Pete, I got to ask you 10 seconds.
Tarnished. Clearly tarnished worldwide, not just in Iraq. The coalition fell apart rapidly. People really seem to have a negative view of the situation.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Well, next, Obama's daughter is not happy with something she heard on the campaign trail. We'll tell you what it is and why coming up. You're going to stay with us.